everyone. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. I have a very special guest here for the show today. Can you go ahead and announce to the world who you are and where you're calling from?
Yes, my name is Amanda Quick, and I am calling from Central Oregon.
Wow, great. And can we go ahead and talk about your past leading up into your present?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in Hawaii. My family, I was born and raised there. I left when I was 18, determined to claim my, newfound freedom and figure my life out. I got married very young and had 3 children. And I had 3 children by the time I was 28. And so my early 20s was all about baby raising. And I was a full-time stay-at-home mom and loved, my kids. They were my entire focus. And my life blew up from that belief of everything my kids and my life is perfect after my ex-husband, the father of my 3 children, was arrested for attempted human trafficking in 2016. So 8 years ago, what I thought was a perfect life ended up being a complete lie. And my goal today is to spread awareness and to help people see that they're not alone, because I'm not the only one who's experienced traumatic shatterings. And, when my ex-husband was arrested, I was completely blinded to the truth. I had zero clue what was going on. He was living a literal double life. And in his arrest, they offered children, and he showed up and wanted to purchase these children for his purposes. And he basically lied to me and said, I was just trying to help them. I was seeing if it was real so I could report it. And I believed his lies because I was focused on taking care of my kids. I was focused on being a mom and my family unit. I hadn't worked in over 6 years. I was very, very stuck. And I supported him through his criminal hearing. And in Colorado, where we were at the time, the constitutional right to parent is more important than just about anything else. And he retained his parenting rights. He received a sentence of only probation, which could go on a rant about that, but he received a sentence of only probation and moved back into the house. And I believed we were going to rebuild our family because he was in therapy and all these things. And I thought we were dealing with a sex addiction, not something worse. And slowly but surely, my eyes started to be opened as I started to process my feelings, and I started to separate myself from him in this bubble that we had created. I ended up going back to work. I started to realize that I wasn't actually okay in my marriage, and I really had never been okay, but I thought I was okay because who was I to now make a big problem after we just got through this? And I put so much weight on myself. And I think a lot of women and mothers do this, where it's all if it breaks, it's all my fault somehow, even though I wasn't the one who did what he did. And eventually I started to realize I couldn't be in the marriage, and we separated. And that was when I started to see the manipulative behaviors for what it was. And I started to see my children's behavior for what it was. And I started to see the gaslighting and the parental alienation start because it was actually my fault that we were breaking up, according to him and according to the children, because of what he was telling them. And I started to see how just not a good person he was, but I still thought he was an asshole. I didn't think he was dangerous. And once the divorce hearing began, I started to see that he actually was very, very deviant, and that there was underlying darkness. And when I started to see the grooming behavior in my children, that's when I realized, and it was like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. This was the man who was arrested for trying to have sex with children. Hello, it's been in front of your face the whole damn time. And I had a choice to make. I had to figure out what I was going to do because of my support in his criminal hearing. I was facing a very uphill battle because any support, doesn't matter why, means that I had deemed him safe in the court's eyes. And so I had to unravel that and show why my everything had changed. And I had to prove that my children were in danger. Didn't matter what his history was. I had to prove that there was problems today, because the constitutional right to parent, the court system believes that perpetrators treat their own children differently. And so it didn't matter what happened, didn't matter what any history was. It was only his relationship with his current children. And so after 18 months and $75,000, I successfully proved my case. And in March of 2020, 2 weeks before the pandemic, I got full custody and had no idea what was coming. And it has been over 4 years now of no contact. He basically vanished after he lost the case, and we haven't heard from him since. And so today, my goal, I wrote my book, I shared my story. I want to spread awareness on, first of all, this idea that human trafficking doesn't happen in the US is not true. And it doesn't look like just shipping containers across borders. It looks like everybody's in their backyards, somebody, you just don't know you know them, who was participating or potentially even a victim to such things, that this happens in a very different way. My goal is to help other people realize that they don't have to hold the shame for other people's choices just because you were related to them or married to them. And that so many people are in abusive situations they don't even actually know that they're in. So many people are in mentally, emotionally, psychologically abusive relationships and have no clue until they start to go, well, this isn't right. And then they feel like they're the idiot or they're the problem. And so many people who have reached out to me that have read my book, they see themselves in maybe not the specifics, but in the thought processes I had and the way that I spoke to myself and the things that I believed about the things that were my fault. And, I feel like what most people need in this world is to know that they're not alone. They need to know that they're not the only one, and somebody out there gets it and can see them and understand them. And, part of sharing that story is to do just that, because there's nobody else out there. We've did lots of research that has ever written a story from the wife's perspective about human trafficking and has ever actually come and said, yes, I was married to the man who did that, and here's my story. And I'm definitely not the only one, but there's so much shame and judgment wrapped up around in it that I feel like it's really, really important for us to come and share our stories.
Well said. Overall, well said. Tell me, an excerpt from the book that is most important that you've written within the book that highlights the whole book.
So I'm actually going to read, I am going to read there's almost like on the back cover that actually has the message, the overall message of the book itself. Just give me 1 second here. And when I wrote this book, it was really intending to be not just the story, but the overcoming of the story. Much more than a memoir, this book is also a beacon of light and hope for others in the same situation. As Amanda states, my message to the world is really quite simple. The only person who can change your life is you. Every single person has the power to choose differently. Are you ready?
Wow. And tell me, well said. Tell me about the symptoms, because I'm gonna share a little bit because I don't want to make it about me, but my husband had like these images. I was watching a Law and Order under 1 minute. I was watching Law and Order, and they were showing about sex trafficking and how men take naked pictures of children and they put it within a pixel image and make a creative art image of it. Now, fast forward, I made him open up an app on his phone because it had two-part encryption. And when he opened it, I seen that image and I contacted the FBI right away. So my heart goes out to you. Tell me the symptoms that you saw that he was doing to the kids, so the next woman, if she's blinded, she will know,
Yeah.
this is wrong.
So I'm going to give 2 parts here, because there's a lot that I excused away in the beginning of our relationship, because I met him when I was 19 and I was a grown up. I knew everything about the world at 19, and I excused away some pretty crappy behavior. And so, first of all, when he met me and dated me in secret for over a year with his second wife, I was his third wife. And so I was the hiding one. I was very, very young. I was an adult, yes, but I had shared with him pictures of me at 16, 17, because I thought I was an adult. That was just a couple years ago. And he romanticized them and wanted all of the details of my teenage promiscuity. He would make me feel guilty for not wanting to do those things with him and other men. He wanted to invite other men, perhaps even charge them. I don't actually know, but now knowing what I know, for participating. And then he would shame me and guilt me for saying, no, I didn't want to do that. Now, he got over it once I got pregnant and we were having babies, and I thought he moved on. So huge red flag that I missed in the very beginning. And anybody who is asking you to do any kind of sexual anything that you are not comfortable with is a very big red flag, no matter what your relationship is. So just start there. Fast forward to, 10, not quite 10 years later, and my kids are, I want to say they're like 4, 6, and 8 at the time. My middle son, he's the most emotionally manipulatable because he's the most emotionally sensitive and empathetic. And he feels other people in a really, really deep way, always has been. And so he was the one immediately taking to the daddy is lonely when we're not there. And so we should go see him more often. And daddy says this, and it's all your fault. And so you start with the parental manipulations, and you start with the, I'm the trustworthy one and I love you so much. And you build a closer relationship. Now, there's a variation of very appropriate normal, of course, with parents and children in this way. But there was a feeling that started to surface in me, and I started to pay attention because I realized more was going on. My son, it's 6 at the time, started his behavior towards me changed, and with a sexual undertone. For an example, I picked him up from school. He was very excited to have his brothers actually they were spending the day with daddy, but because he had an event at school and I was the one there because his father couldn't go to school because of his sex offender probation, he got to spend the afternoon with just mommy. So he was super excited. He wanted to watch a movie and go for ice cream and all the things 6-year-olds like to do. We sits down for a movie and he climbs in my lap and starts trying to kiss me on the lips. Totally never had happened before. So there's a change in behavior, which shows me that this is now being exposed to him in some fashion. And what is going on? This is not, what is wrong with my child? So that's a big red flag. If the behavior towards, a normal parent changes and has a sexual undertone, when that has not been, some families kiss on the lips, just an easy peck. But that had not been standard practice. It had never been something I did. It's never something I was comfortable with. So very big red flag. That started the thought process in me with something is going on with my kid. I have to pay attention, but I can't prove anything with just that. I started paying further attention to the manipulative, the exchanges between us were very, very high conflict, and everything was a negotiation and a hostage exchange. And everything was I miss you, buddy, so much, and special time. He moved my middle son's bedroom away from the others. So they were sharing their rooms, and then because he wanted his own room. So then he separated him. So that's a potential red flag. Again, it's the stacking of things, right? So that was concerning because he no longer was close to his brothers. The one that really, really triggered me and caused me to call Child Protective Services was I was driving to school. I was driving them. I was practicing a speech in my head. I was going to give a presentation at work, totally not tuning out the noise, not even paying any attention. I pulled up to the school. Have a great day, guys. I'm totally off in my head planning my day. And my son looks to me and he says, "Sometimes I suck on daddy's fingers." And I just, have a great day, because you can't respond. You can't make him feel bad. You can't have shame. You can't do anything. And I sent him off to school and I called my lawyers. What the hell do I do with this? And because we were in the middle of a high conflict divorce, you have to be very, very, very careful to make new accusations, because then I could be seen as the alienating parent. So giant, big red flag number 3. And Child Protective Services, completely useless, whole different thing there. But I knew at that point something bigger was going on. I knew that we were moving the boundary line closer and closer and closer. And that's what grooming is. It's seemingly appropriate behavior just starts to, oh, we're just playing a silly game. Oh, we're just doing this. We're just starting to move the comfort boundary. By this point, my, mom instincts are, I want to pack my kids up and drive to Canada. I don't want to deal with this anymore, but I can't do that or I'm going to get charged with kidnapping. So I'm paying extra attention. I started reading books about body safety. I start trying to see what can I do to empower them, because I can't be there when they're in their father's house. I don't have a choice. So I find the books about body safety and I'm reading to them. And, it's talking about red flags and what they are and what they should do and blah, blah, blah. And I'm reading this book, and one of the pages talks about if anybody shows you pictures or videos of naked people, that's a red flag. And my son stops me. He says, it's okay if it's animated, right? Red flag number 4. That same night, I'm putting him to bed, and I start asking about the sleeping arrangements, because at this point I'm recording conversations and I'm collecting my data. And I say, he was talking about the book, and there's this whole storyline about, this kid who ends up, hiding in the bathroom to stay safe. And he was talking about how smart that was. And he was talking about, where his friends' houses in relation to our houses. And I say, I will always come get you no matter what. And, I start asking about, I'm putting him to bed in his room, and I ask him about his room in his dad's house and, where it is and where he sleeps at his dad's house. And he says that at his dad's house, he has, his separate room, but that he actually only sleeps with daddy. And I said, what do you mean? And he says, well, daddy sleeps on the couch. And I said, okay, but why do you sleep in your bed? Does daddy ever sleep in your bed with you? And he says, yes, daddy sleeps in my bed with me. Now, this is like, a child-sized bed here. And I said, do you do that with your brothers? No, just me. Red flag number 5. So all of this stacked up together, added with the history, the fact that he was arrested for trying to have sex with an 11 and 14-year-old. So we have prepubescent and postpubescent. It was enough to build my case. Now, obviously, there was a lot more underneath that. I had the case file in field. I had a lot of other things going on. But these are the type of things that start to happen that can have excuses, because, my kids climbed into bed with me all the time at night. The difference was they came to me because they had a nightmare and wanted comfort. It's very different if at 2:00 in the morning I went to their room to sleep with them. And, the underlying feeling of something is not right and my kid is, treating me with sexual energy, we have to pay attention to that. And if you have any of the mommy instincts that something is going on, listen to that, because it's so subtle. It's such a subtle, explainable, nothing is wrong. And yet, that that's not true. And I am very grateful that I listened, and then I started to collect the evidence, and I wouldn't take no for an answer. And I just kept going, because there was no way I was going to fail unless I stopped, and I wasn't stopping.
Yeah, well said. He obviously had a mental problem.
Yes.
Something was wrong with him. But
Yes.
how did you and your family heal?
So healing, I got the gift of COVID, in the sense that 2 weeks after I got full custody, COVID shut the world down. Yeah. And for me, that time was the most important healing time, because he had just left our lives. My kids stopped going to school. I stopped working outside of the house. And instead, we were all home, quarantined, so that we had a chance to reconnect. Because by this point in time, I was the bad parent. I was the wrong one. I was the boundary holding, mean parent. And my children didn't feel safe or connected with me because of everything that they had just gone through. And COVID allowed us to completely reset. And so by removing the conflicts in all regards, we got to come back together and reestablish our family unit. Okay. I'm hugely grateful for those few months of complete isolation, because it actually gave us that reestablishing time. And at the same time, everything about what I knew to be true had shifted. Like, my whole reality identity was gone. And so I had to really take a look at what mattered to me and what I wanted to do and how I wanted to parent and how I wanted to communicate with them and how I was going to help them unravel the fact that they had just lost a parent. Because as horrific as it all was, that's how they felt it. They felt it like a loss of a parent because they didn't understand the inappropriate behavior. They didn't understand that it was wrong. They were children. And so I really had to be with them in that moment. And I really started on a seeking journey, down an unraveling. And what had happened in January of 2020, right before my divorce, is I actually went to go see a psychic. That's part of my process. And how do I get the hell out of this? Because nothing is working. And the way that she spoke to me was exactly what I needed to hear. And whether you believe in angels or psychic, it doesn't matter, because she lit something in me that helped me keep going. And it helped me know that I could and would succeed if I just kept at it. And I needed that. I needed to believe in myself. I needed to know that every hard thing was for me so that I could succeed. And so after all of that, I had this like door opened and this mind open to there's more. There's more than just going to work and raising kids and living this life. That the complexity of our reality is much bigger than I allowed myself to believe before. And so I wanted to understand why this happened to me. I wanted to understand the connection from the physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual self. I wanted to understand how I could heal and help others. And it was so loud that I needed to write a book. I just like kept hearing it. People kept saying, you should write a book. It's like, oh, I know. And for me, writing the book was one of the most cathartic and healing things I did, because I had to relive in detail from the other side. And I had to feel it in my body again, but know that I could pull it out. And I had gained tools to understand how to work with energy in my body and how to release emotions that I didn't want to look at. And I started to have more sensitivities and awarenesses because I started listening to myself. And I realized that by listening and trusting myself, it was how I got out of my situation. And so it was also how I was going to move forward. And I wasn't going to go back to trusting my ex-husband or the lawyers or anybody else over myself again. And so I had to go through all of that so that I could understand it and then come out the other side and use all of that information to help shift my mindset, to release the shame and judgment that I went through and the choices I made with the information I had. And that process is not linear, long, and complicated. And there are definitely triggers that come up today, but I'm so much more equipped and I have such a different level of trust in who I am and the choices. And I know it's going to work out because I've seen it. I've seen it work out. I know that it will. It doesn't make sense right now, whatever the thing is. And I get to be a model for that. And I get to be a model for that for my children and anybody else who reads my story. And to me, that's even more healing, to know that I can help others feel seen and that it can be for this bigger purpose and that there's something good that can come out of it all. Really helps me know that it was worth it in the end.
So under 2 minutes, because we're going to end at 3:28 exactly. Tell me about your TEDx and when it will be for grabs.
Well, the TED gods decide when it's published. I don't decide. So I spoke on February 2nd at Western University and the title of the talk is The Healing Power of Storytelling. And basically, within sharing my story, talking about how my mindset changed from everything happening to me to everything happening for me. And that how I chose to tell the story allowed me to release and to heal and to completely change my life. And it's really an invitation for other people to see that no matter how bad it gets, you have the power to choose, you have the power to change and to heal and really to do anything in your life.
How can the people reach you?
My website is amandaquigghealing.com and my book is thesextraffickerswife.com.
Thank you. Very informative, y'all. Sex trafficking. You all take care, be safe, and thank you, Amanda Quigg. Stay on the line. Y'all be safe, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.